Hello and welcome back to the safety brief. I know we've been a little bit quiet here the past few weeks. Our stalwart leader of the safety brief has had a baby, so we are congratulating her and celebrating with her, and we are thrilled for her family. So, at least for the next few episodes, you've got the three of us and anybody else we can cajole into bringing on the safety brief with us. So, thank you all for joining us today. You've got a little bit of the marketing perspective from myself. You've got the sales and technical perspective coming in from Hornsby, and you've got the threat intelligence perspective coming in from Matt, whose mask will make sense here in just a second. So, what we are discussing today is really the overarching, I'm going to say, 5-year goal of Blockworks. If we are to sit down and have our big, hairy, audacious goal, it is to pivot the entire industry from reaction to prevention, from incident response to proactivity. So it's our entire goal to pivot this industry around, and we are going to hit that on the head today. We know that people have told us that we are ready to suck the profit right out of this industry in terms of incident response as a service, garnering $400 an hour type situations. We think prevention is better. We believe that it is best for our clients. Even if you're not going to get that $400 an hour paycheck to remediate an incident, you've got a company that is continuing to operate, continuing to grow, continuing to trust you, continuing to develop that relationship. So, prevention really in the long term is the long view, is the more profitable method, and it's 100% possible. So, we're going to talk a little bit about all of those aspects today. The first one we're going to kick off with here is the sales and marketing perspective. So, Mike, you sit on sales calls all the time, talking with people about our solutions and how we operate and how we deliver. And really, it's convincing people not to utilize FUD. So, chat with us a little bit about that, what you're finding, what you're seeing.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say the common threads, and we primarily talk to MSPs with already pre-existing IT engineering support benches, right? And so what they are most concerned about is number one, the historical precedent they've set for themselves, meaning the narrative that they've built over time around security. And that doesn't mean it's a bad narrative. It doesn't mean that it's a good narrative. It just means that they want to be consistent, right? And I think the other piece too is quite simply there's a lot of options out there right now. This is a very common topic. I think if we look back, I'd say maybe 5 years ago, cybersecurity today is what backups were 5 years ago. It was maybe in the general populace's view, was not for everybody, limited to those that need high uptime, banks, hospitals, whatever, an optional line item on a budget, and maybe excessive for some small to medium business. And I say less than 20 employees when I say small to medium business in this instance. And then today, everybody has backup. Almost everybody. Either everybody moved to the cloud and thus has some form of redundancy without even knowing that they're paying for that, or has some form of backup. So it's interesting how obviously times progress, but I think the first concern is most of our partners are worried about the people they've been in business with for 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years. Some of them could be their friends, could be their family, right? Are just concerned on how to approach that conversation. And unfortunately, what we've seen in the channel is a lot of, we'll just call it a lot of fear mongering, a lot of, hey, sky's falling, hurricane's coming, it could get you. Here's some footage of a home like being lifted off the ground. It's like that could have been from 5 years ago in a different country, but it evokes a response. It evokes an emotional response. It hits a pressure plate for people. And I think we saw this truly start in COVID time because of a lot of fear mongering, because of a lot of look at this house leaving the ground. It could be your house next type of communication, private sector, public sector, governmental sector, all over the place. And candidly, call it what it was, effective messaging, snake oil, somewhere in the middle. It was effective. It was effective. And so for those MSPs that are like not so on board with the ends justifies the means, but hey, if my client has security, I can care less why they have security. They're sleeping better at night as their provider, and the client's sleeping better at night, trusting that they have a better solution. But I think there's a better way, and I think that that's the on ramp to this today's discussion. Is I think there's a better way, and everything in retrospect is 2020. So I'm not condescending. I'm not demonizing anyone's sales tactics or anybody's path to adoption.
That's my job.
Security practices. Yeah, just wait. We meet our, our madman over here. Uh, and I will say, if you're listening to the audio this week, you gotta get the video. If you're just podcast audio only, you're missing out. But that being said, I think again, prefacing it, a lot of the concerns we hear are either here's how I've messaged this historically, or here's how I've messaged it and it's worked. Why change it? Why change it? And if my clients are signing up, if my clients are measurably safer than they were last week, why would I change it? And so I think that that's kind of why we're having this discussion today.
And it's super interesting you bring up backup because I was in the heart of, right, everybody needs backup era. And it worked, to give the FUD example, right? So I was helping people across the nation figure out their marketing message. And in California, you talk about earthquakes. In Florida, you talk about hurricanes. You talk about the disaster that could befall them and why they need a backup. And people are trying to treat cybersecurity as the exact same playbook. The problem is we've played that playbook and everybody knows we've played that playbook, and you can't really play it again because people are like, yeah, I already did that thing that protects me from the earthquake. I already did that thing that protects me from the hurricane. Why are we discussing this again, right? So whenever I phrase this conversation, I feel like we've gotten to the point where it's white noise to talk about FUD behind cybersecurity because people just they have stopped caring, and it's really our fault because of how we market it back up. It's how we market compliance too. Oh, the big bad compliance people are coming for you. Have they come for anybody, right? Like, so we start to lose our credibility. It's just like when you're telling your small child, right? You have an option to do this or do that. And they pick option 3, and there are no consequences for picking option 3 that you did not give them, right? It takes one time for them to realize they're like, oh, these people don't back up what they're saying. So it's kind of the same concept when it comes to marketing. So how do we do it? We have to change it from FUD to a completely different mentality, and a completely different offering and operations. And I want to bring Matt in here with his mask in terms of you've crafted an offering that allows us to do this differently. And I want you to talk a little bit about that prevention centric offering that we've developed so that it's actually possible to deliver a different message, and prefacing this with only 12% of the population globally has really taken advantage of this prevention based model. So if you choose to do so, you are still on the cutting edge and you are still ahead of the curve. And this can be your next competitive advantage for the next 5, 10, maybe less, depending on how quick the energy industry changes, but you can be ahead at this point. So Matt, tell us a little bit about how we've actually changed the offering completely to remove FUD.
Well, let's go back to something that Mike said, and let's kind of go a little bit of a history lesson here. COVID. We all know that word. We all dread that word. I just got over it like 2 weeks ago, and it sucked. You know what sucked worse? When COVID came out and the bad actors started using COVID as a way to actually get people to click on things by leveraging fear, uncertainty, and doubt. They play on the human emotions, and that's how they get people. You're less inclined to click on something saying save $700 on a Herman Miller chair than you are on 20 people have been found dead in your local area from COVID. Click here for more. Well, you click there. Somebody that's, wearing a mask like mine is, smiling like that. So, there you go. So the sad fact is Bad actors were using this. Good actors started using the same tactics. Oh, run this in your environment. It'll tell you everything that's wrong. Oh, look at all these bad things that you have. You need to make sure those are taken care of right away. That's very dangerous. Is it though? Is it? You gave somebody the keys to your house, turned off your security system, and they tell you all the crap they stole. Cool. I'm pretty sure that if you call the police on that, they're just going to look at you and say, here's the award for being bad. Please go back inside and don't call us for the next 365 days. So now, how do you get from being in that situation to being secured? Well, first off, if somebody wants to test your environment, let them do a black box test. Don't let them in. Don't give them anything that they could possibly know about your environment. If they're good enough, they're going to find a way in. If they're not good enough, your security system held up. And that's what you're hoping will happen. So you take that security system with all of your layering, all the perimeter, everything that you've got in place right now, and you add something that's smart enough to make those detections before anything else is out there. That can say, I've seen this. It may not be this exact file or this exact variant, but I know that I should prevent it. Because everything that I am seeing, earmark wise, behavior wise, needs to be prevented. That technology exists. People that are leveraging it, they're secure. Unfortunately, as Emily said, adoption is super low. Everybody's focused on what the media is telling them is the next go-to thing. I'm sorry, as much as I love the EDR that we use, and it is fantastic, it is the best one that I have ever played with. EDR is not the second coming. Like, you can keep sitting there, it's not going to walk on water for you. And it's not going to keep something out of your environment. It's going to tell you when something got in, and then you can take action on it. Or, in the case of ours, we can build it to do really cool things as automation. It's still not a prevention utility. It is designed to be used in conjunction with something to keep your environment protected. And that's what we've done. We've sat down, we've looked at what's the best way that we can keep people protected. We go through, we build that. We come at you with transparency. There is no scare tactics here. We're just telling you the straight truth. Attacks are ramping up at an exponential pace. It used to be you'd hear about something weekly. I'm seeing multiple daily. Large companies, small companies. SMB market share, you're not immune to this. This is something that's being targeted even more because they know that in the market space of SMBs, you've got Bob, who is your, systems engineer, or your sysadmin, who's also now trying to be your security admin. It's two different disciplines. What works in IT doesn't work in cyber. You can't turn it off and on again and expect it to work. You do that with cyber, you just broke 18 more things, and now the dude's sitting here going, I'll know, it's a dumpster fire, but I guess everything's fine. Doesn't work. There's not enough coffee in the world for that. So we make it easy for you. We have an offering, multiple offerings, let's be fair, to help with perimeter. We have offerings to help with endpoint. When you layer those together, it's pretty amazing what's capable, because the endpoint alone is 99.98% prevention rate based on independent testing. Shout out to Unit 221B. You guys are awesome. It's unbelievable what the solution's capable of doing. So that 0.02%, all you have to have is something in there that can help to prevent that. Nothing's ever going to be perfect, but if you have the right layering in place, you could pretty much get to that point, very close to it. And that's what we offer. We make it amazing. We make it affordable. And not only that, it's monitored by us 24/7 with countless years of experience. under our belts in the cyber industry. We're not fly by night. We're not trying to capitalize off of, the growing cyber market. We've lived cyber and breathed cyber for years, decades. This is where you don't see the FUD.
So 2 follow-up questions here.
Okay.
The first is surrounding people that utilize EDR as their primary focus will tout the amount of time before they recognize something. Like that is their main claim to fame. That is how quick they can remediate an attack, right?
Right.
Can you give us the clear difference between that strategy and mentality and the strategy and mentality that is prevention? Like, what is the core difference between those 2 methods? And by prevention, what do we mean versus time to recover or time to remediate?
This is my earphone case. We're going to use this as an example for EDR. If I were to take this and I were to throw it at a monitor that's sitting here, it's going to detect I've thrown it, and it's going to respond by saying, you now need to potentially replace your monitor because it is broken. That's lag time. That's an amount of time between an incident occurring and you being notified the incident occurred and what the next steps are that you potentially need to take. Prevention sees me take this out, walks over, grabs my hand, and says, no, please don't do that. You don't need to do that. Or the other thing, let's put it in the terms of why I have this on. You're using an EDR only. Dude wearing something like this shows up at the front door of your environment. He gets in. Cool, your EDR is going to say, hey, a skeleton's in the environment. You may want to go take it out. Okay. Whereas our prevention solution says, no, we're not open today. Please don't ever come back. And prevents it. You can't get in. EDR gives you homework. I've said this all the time. I did a test, literally laughed beyond reasonable amounts of laughter at this because the EDR that I was playing with caught something a day after I actually had run it on a machine. It sent this back to me and it said, here's your recommendations. Format the laptop. Oh, okay. That's helpful. The funny fact, my prevention solution full out prevented it. And it wasn't even on the machine anymore. So the recommendation was to wipe a laptop that no longer had a threat on it and never had a threat on it.
And doesn't that advice tend to backfire if an incident really did occur and you had to go with insurance or you had to go to authorities therein?
In the event of an incident occurring of that nature, the first thing that you will find if you reach out to file a claim is you can't do anything in the environment to remediate until their investigation is complete. Basically, you have to take the machine offline and not touch it. You do anything to it, nullifies your claim almost instantly because they're going to say that you contaminated the scene. They cannot get a clear picture. There you go.
So you negate that final layer of protection that you even thought you had.
Yeah. And then you look at, okay, how much is it going to cost to get this machine back up? How much am I out because this person's no longer able to work? I'm paying somebody, but they can't do their job. How much is the damage done to your reputation? You're going to have to file a public report stating that you are a victim of a cybercrime. Looking at you, CISA, still haven't seen it. But this is the state that we currently live in. It's a dangerous place, and if you want to play in that dangerous place, you need to have solutions that are going to keep you sufficiently protected, not ones that are being sold to you because they don't have a legitimate way of selling it to you. At that point, you may as well be down in Florida trying to sell life insurance plans to 80-year-olds. Well, you're 80. You may not be here too long. What about your loved ones? If that's how you have to sell a security program, no. Mike's losing it. He's losing it.
Yeah, that's terrible, but that's accurate. Yeah, that's really yeah.
You
That's
don't
well
bring me on here for the not
No,
terrible
no, no.
aspect of
You're
things.
symbolizing FUD. You know, I recognized why I was giggling earlier is if you remember the insurance commercials that was like, I'm Crash, you know, and he's
Yes.
like the guy
Oh, Dean
that like
Winters
runs
for
into the
Allstate.
garage, he
Yeah,
breaks the
Yeah.
basketball hoop.
Mayhem.
Yeah.
Yep.
mayhem.
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
mayhem. That's right. I am mayhem. That's who Matt is symbolizing today. Is I am FUD and mayhem today.
Wow,
But
I was really going for Ghost from
no,
Call of
you
Duty,
you
but
did great.
yeah.
You did great. And you're doing great, right? It's not over. But one thing I wanted to make sure we addressed, Emily introduced it at the prologue of our discussion, and it's really important and we can't miss it because if you're an engineer listening to prevention or you're in incident response listening to the message of prevention, right? There's an element to where you're like, is this to eliminate the scope of my work, of my livelihood, right? And Blockworks' prevention model is completely opposite. We seek to defend livelihoods, not eradicate them as far as jobs go. But the interesting thing is we don't apply this same level of logic to a insurance company or a disaster recovery company as opposed to like a roofing company, right? So the roofing company isn't in competition to the insurance industry. What are they doing? Well, they're going up, replacing roofs proactively before they leak. The goal of the roofer is not to put the insurance agent out of business, right? There is always going to be a measurable level of risk that
Mhm.
with a brand new roof, with a solar roof, whatever roof you have, tree could fall down, break roof, rain can come, wind can come, right? But the goal of the roofer is to do as best a job they can to proactively resolve catastrophe, prevent it from happening in the first place. Do we still need insurance? Do we still need disaster response? Yes, we do. The point is, we shouldn't just resort to our insurance claim every single time rain comes. And I think what we're seeing as a historical trend is people have gotten very comfortable with, well, we live in the rainiest part of the country. This is just the way it is. Roofs are expensive. Maybe the roofer doesn't have your best interest, right? There's just a lot of this dialogue. And so the other point to this that I can imagine people are thinking about is like, all right, Matt, Mike, Emily, if prevention's so good, why haven't I heard of it before? Why, if this is so great, if your endpoint has a 99.98% efficacy rate, why haven't I heard about it? Well, and
Want
that's
the
where I go
honest
and I
truth
allude
on
back
that?
to and we're going to unpack it, right? And we don't need to be mayhem to unpack it. We could just exercise candor and say, follow the money, right? Follow the
Mhm.
money. And the reality is that if there are entities standing to benefit from the failure of prevention, then they may not be touting it as their first line of defense.
Let me
And we're not
ask you
going to unpack
this.
this. We're not going to make it, overly a rabbit hole. But I
No,
think it's just a challenging point for those listening to think is, hey, why haven't I heard the message of prevention as much? Why is this a newer thing? Is Blockworks just manifesting this to be this made up competitive advantage? No, we've been doing this a long time. The message of prevention is actually gaining traction because people realize it's cheaper long run to budget for prevention and build that into a recurring cyber security budget as opposed to you now have a blank check ransomware encryption event and you're negotiating with terrorists. You have no clue what you're going to pay. And to Matt's
Mhm.
point earlier, the moment that skeleton walks into your house, that is a crime scene. You can't do anything if you seek to go off with litigation, file a cyber insurance claim, whatever, because they have to now verify the integrity of all of this. Was this a setup? Was this an insider attack? Was it a framing job? Is this insurance fraud, right? Like, did you intentionally drive your car off the road to get a new car, right? All of these things insurance companies need to do, and that's fine, and that's their process. I'm not demonizing it. But the point being is, if it's only a response limited posture, you're going to be very handcuffed when that time comes and it's past the event scope you're now in a response scope. So if the event took your business down, or if the event happens to slow business, guess what the response cycle is going to do? Perpetuate that. That's not a negative. That's a part of life. Just like if you're getting your roof replaced or roof repaired, yes, we need a new roof. That's the way it is. But again, there's a lot of these talking points that go towards the benefits of prevention founded on trust. It is possible, working with the right tools and the right monitoring. But, again, talking about the time sink, and then we can open up the dialogue. The time sunk on response alone, if you took the man hour time and then took that into a monthly budget of, what if I took 1/8 of that or 1/12 of that over a 12-month cycle and just made that prevention? Even if we had to do this once, that's more expensive than 12 months of prevention, right? And
100%.
and you get away with the trust intact.
And so we have a larger societal issue of why prevention isn't necessarily talked about or isn't necessarily embraced. And it's because across the board, being proactive does not seem to be as rewarded. And what I mean by that is, for example, you do not get an extra amount on your tax return because you filed it early, but you darn well will get punished and penalized and have to pay more if you file it late, right? So we don't reward people for taking the proactive action across the board as much as we penalize the people for doing something wrong. Same thing when you were able to rent videos, which is not really a thing anymore, right? But you were charged late fees if you didn't return your video. You were not rewarded for turning it in on time and remembering to be kind and rewind, right? You were punished for the action after. And people have been so conditioned to that just naturally by the way we work and the way society operates that they are naturally inclined to procrastinate. They're naturally inclined to react as opposed to be proactive, because at the end of the day, what's the benefit that we see in many things with being proactive? And the benefit feels so intangible. Your heart feeling better because you turned an assignment in early doesn't hit as hard on dopamine as the poor reaction to turning an assignment in late. Like, it's just how our brains have gotten to be wired based on societal actions that has pushed prevention rhetoric down, because there's not as much of a tangible benefit. We know it's there. You know it's there. Exactly what Hornsby said. Over the course of time, significantly cheaper, significantly more profitable, not to mention you still get to run your business as opposed to run the risk later of not being a going concern as a business because you got attacked, right? So that risk becomes more valuable for some reason, but it's the way we've programmed ourselves as a society that is perpetuating this problem.
There's another underlying part to this as well.
Yeah,
Mike, you said it earlier, follow the money. Okay. I want you to take a look at something. Anybody that wants to that's watching this. I want you to go pull up endpoint security vendors. Go to their website. Look at their product offerings. They're going to pitch you on all of these great things. But you're going to notice something. One of the offerings that is clearly standing out, that's very heavily pushed, is their incident response as a service. So I ask you this, and I've questioned this myself many times. Is it ethical for a company that's supposed to be keeping you safe to basically put on there, we'll fix it when it fails? Doesn't seem like they're too inclined to actually go through and keep you safe, because you're buying their product, but if their product isn't super strong or super secure, it's okay. You can just pay them more and they'll fix their mistakes for you. But that's not going to keep you safe, and that's going to cost you way more in the long run. So why exactly are we doing that? And it's because it's a revenue stream. When you have something that pays substantially more than what it would cost to get the software in the first place, there is no incentive to have prevention. guarantee if you told the finance people that you were going to go prevention first and it was going to cut down on the ability for them to have revenue coming in from that offering, they're going to call that a resume generating event, and you're going to be looking for another company, and they're going to find a way to bolster their incident response services even more. Sad state of truth. I'm not calling anybody out specifically, I'm calling everybody out. I'm an equal opportunity when it comes to calling out terrible practices.
Yeah. And for anybody listening live now or catching the recording after, if you think that's extremist thought, look at Microsoft getting put under the microscope right now for selling Office 365 as a service and selling security to Office 365. There are a lot of people starting to have their gears turn on, hey, should you be allowed to, sell access to the beach and sell life vests, right? Like, is there a way to like introduce risk intentionally just because it exists, but also sell the thing that mitigates the risk? If so, why not build it into the product and just do good? And there is real and outside of right. Thank you for Mayhem, always putting us in check. But the reality is that is not extremist thought. That is real concern that the privacy and security community is absolutely talking about. Not calling out Microsoft, not saying, not making this a witch hunt, but there is very real rhetoric that is bubbling up and growing in commonality that people are realizing, like, is it ethical to put a paywall behind security for something that is potentially designed in an insecure way? And at least from the same person. And Microsoft with their licensing and Office 365 is getting in some very hot water in less than 40 days, like 30 days in the past month. That is real. That is real. And so again, it's truly no different than being an automobile manufacturer selling cars without seatbelts and making seatbelts an add-on. If you know that it is inherently more risky without the seatbelt, it is the moral and ethical obligation of the automobile manufacturer, and thus now law, to do that. Cars cannot ship without seatbelts, right? Like, but there was a time and a place when people got to choose, but that's where we're kind of at right now. So it's interesting to see, hey, Microsoft wants to monetize everything, and I'm all about Office 365. I'm all about continuity, but also getting into the security space is having some interesting ethical conversations. And I'm thankful for the EU and the privacy things and everything that they're driving and that we're learning from too, because it is important to talk about. It's really important to talk about. Not that Microsoft shouldn't, employees shouldn't make money and feed their family. They absolutely should. But I think the interesting thing is we're seeing this thread of thought of, hey, maybe there's something fishy going on here. Maybe there's something monetarily incentivized here. And to Emily's point earlier, nobody likes to brush 3 times a day and floss. I don't say nobody. I say the grand majority is going to brush 3 times a day and floss once a day, right? But everybody goes to their dentist and be like, oh no, woe is me. Shame. You didn't do what you were supposed to. But what's the interesting thing about this? We know exactly how to prevent cavities. We know exactly how to prevent root canals. They are painful, not fun, incredibly uncomfortable things that result in time out of office. You can't eat the food you want, whatever. But yet we still do not do the 60 seconds a day to prevent such things. And that's where it's a cultural element. And truly, if you're just meeting Blockworks for the first time and this is your first interaction, welcome aboard. Good to meet you. But we preface everything with a mindset shift. Yes, we're nerds. Yes, we're security practitioners. But if you can't at least go through the mental gymnastics that say, I think this is preventable, and I also think a lot of things in this life that are negative are preventable, that's a permission entry, I think, as far as partnership is concerned. So something to consider, something to chew on, but really healthy dialogue as far as what trends we're seeing.
Yeah, 100%. It is a permission to play as a Blockworks partner that you can find your way to prevention, right? And make sure prevention is your priority. We frame this in a way that our responsibility, once we have found it, is to now proliferate that through the world. We recognize that FUD has been the way to market, that FUD has been the way to sell, that response has been the gold standard of how to do things. We recognize we're against the grain, but we also recognize that as an industry, we can change that rhetoric. We can change the position of how this industry is presented. And it just takes the small few to start get it going, to start to get it going. I was super excited last week. We were at Right of Boom. The team was at Right of Boom, rather, a fantastic security conference across the board. And we had more people than previously talking about Left of Boom, whether it was awareness training or prevention based training or services like our own, where Left of Boom is possible. It's just a matter of starting to change that rhetoric and really owning that you are going to do that moral and ethical thing and work to prevent first. And we've got to close out here in a couple minutes, but kind of the final point we want to make is that you are not alone in this. This safety brief is here to share that exact story. We've got webinars and sales trainings and marketing trainings to teach you further on what this means. Hornsby will be speaking at Robin Robbins on this exact subject of how to pivot to prevention, kind of a case-by-case, step-by-step model. I deliver a presentation at most of the ASCII events about prevention from a marketing perspective and where we're headed. So we are here to back that up. We've got Fulmer as well at some of these ASCII events on the panel to talk about really how to drive MSPs forward. So don't think of this as a one and done. This is the content that you can see from us on a regular basis as we push this through. And of course, we could sit here and talk about this the rest of the day. But going to go ahead and hand it over here to the guys for some closing remarks as we get to the final point of today's safety brief. Go for it, guys. What do you got?
I would like to throw out there to please feel free to come join us on this lovely platform known as Reddit. Now that Mike is unbanned, and he can, we have our own little subreddit called Cyber Left of Boom.
So are we allowed to mention he's unbanned, or will he get banned again?
I'm sure he'll get banned anyway, so
I
it's
got
fine.
a target on my back, man.
Yeah,
it's you can't help anybody these days. It's really ironic though that Mayhem is running amok on Reddit, and I get banned.
Yeah.
You know,
no, he's got karma points
civil,
out the wazoo.
helpful. Yeah, found that out after like 800 word plus posts. But no, closing thoughts, back on track as far as prevention versus FUD. Again, really want to harp on the fact that this isn't a demonization of current tactics. This is rather a proposition that there is perhaps another path of positioning cybersecurity in a prevention-centric light, that users may actually find it more favorable, that you are less likely to contradict yourself in 12 to 18 months when certain controls need to evolve if you're operating from a prevention-centric mindset rather than hey, it rains a lot, you should upgrade your roof. And in 12 months, hey, rain's gotten heavier, you should upgrade your roof. Hey, it's rained more than it did last year. Again, it doesn't have legs over a long period of time. So just challenge everybody, whether you're in a decision-making role, an engineering role, a merely inquisitive role. I think there's more ground for prevention than what we're giving it right now.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. You can catch us here every other week. You can also catch us on all those other pieces that I mentioned. We will close out for now. Thank you so much, Matt. Thank you so much, Mike. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, everybody.